lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm bringing you yet another 8 that are great, and this time we're going to be talking about travel writing within non-fiction. So this was actually a viewer request, and I haven't read that much, like strictly speaking, just kind of travel writing, but I have read a collection of different kind of memoirs and autobiographies of people where travel has been really important in their life or in their career. I've also got some history books that contain a lot of travel within them, so I think enough of these count, and some of them like kind of old classic diaries of people who have travelled a lot, so I think enough of these count that it's going to be okay. So the first one I wanted to talk about is one that I have mentioned on my channel before, and that's The Lost City of Z by David Grann. This book is a book that I read absolutely years ago, and it's about the very first early explorers who went exploring the Amazon rainforest, kind of their times and their experiences, and then it tracks one particular gentleman who went missing, and the author tries to follow along the path as much as he can and kind of see where this explorer might have disappeared. It's really detailed and fantastic, and has lots of very gruesome tales of all sorts of horrors that befell the people kind of exploring in the Amazon, whether it be the nasty diseases they picked up or the various kind of bugs and plants that kind of meant that things went horribly wrong. So it's really interesting if you're a big fan of nature, and also if you're a big fan of human biology and things getting a bit gross. Another one that really has like historical travel at its heart, which I thought was very fascinating, is The Ice at the End of the World by Jon Gertner. The first half of this book is definitely more about the travel. The later half is looking at kind of a lot of the information that we have from glaciology, I believe is the term, or like the study of ice and glaciers. But this basically tracks the first kind of explorations and travel across Greenland, and then the various scientific advancements that we've made when it comes to climate change and kind of environmental science, due to having these sort of travels happened and sort of stations there. And it's really interesting tracking how difficult it was to make various journeys across Greenland based on sort of various technological advancements there. Similar to with The Lost City of Z, you are going to be looking at, again, lots of very like graphic, horrible descriptions of this time frostbite and sort of the trials that the human body endures when under extreme weather conditions like the cold. But it's also got a lot of very interesting science at the back, so it's kind of something that I think is going to appeal to sort of people who like both travel writing but also people who are really into science writing and kind of environmental stuff. An absolute icon when it comes to nature writing and travel is got to be Life on Air by David Attenborough. This tracks David Attenborough's career with the BBC and sort of the very early formations of nature documentaries as we know them today, and his incredibly stellar career going all over the world. So naturally, because of that, it does include a lot of his kind of travels and journeys and the sometimes less than ethical practices that he would have to do, for example like stealing animals for zoos to get these things funded. So it's a lovely combination of travel writing, his musings on his life in general, and also kind of tracking a history of the BBC and like presenting and kind of TV in general. So it's a little bit of something for everybody, and he just has a really wonderful, lovely writing style. I believe there is actually a slightly more up-to-date version of this one now that has like another couple of chapters added on subsequent to the publication of this, because obviously he has gone on and done a lot more, so it might be worth trying to find that newer, more up-to-date version. One that I read for Springathon last year and absolutely adored is Into the Planet by Jill Heinerth. Jill Heinerth is a cave diver, that is her profession, and she's done some of the most incredible dives out there, and she holds a bunch of different records for all sorts of elaborate things, and she once like dived into an iceberg. Very cool. So this one does track kind of her career through diving, and there's a lot of technical information about scuba diving and the various dangers of cave diving, but you also do get to experience a lot of her travels as she kind of goes across the world, and the different experiences that she has and the different hardships depending on exactly where you are diving. So it takes her into all sorts of kind of swampy territory, it takes her into the jungle, but it also takes her up to the north, or maybe the south, I can't remember which pole they went to, but basically where icebergs were, because she got trapped in one. Very dramatic. I listened to it on audiobook and I really enjoyed that experience too. Going really old school now, if you want like true quintessential just travel diary, The Voyage of the Beagle by Charles Darwin is actually quite a lovely read. It kind of lost me in places depending on exactly what it was talking about, and it definitely suffers from the fact that it is now a piece of historical text that is definitely a product of its time. So there are a few moments you go, oh, we don't say that anymore, that's not cool. But overall, I think Darwin has a very balanced, measured approach, and his descriptions of plant and animal life are fantastic, and it is on the voyage of the Beagle that he started to gather the information to really kind of put forward his theory of evolution, so you can really see the ideas forming through that. Again, I listened to it on audiobook, and I do recommend that because it does mean that on the bits which potentially appeal slightly less to you, you can always just like bump the speed of the narrator up a fraction. I was definitely more interested in the flora and fauna than with the human interactions, but it depends on what you're looking for within your travel writing. One that's a little bit different to a lot of the things on the list but is still a phenomenal read is From Here to Eternity by Doughty, Travelling the World to Find the Good Death. This is a travel writing book in the sense that Doughty has travelled all over the world to see how different cultures and communities interact with death and various death rites that communities will do to honour the departed. Doughty, you may know her as Ask a Mortician on YouTube. She is a big advocate of having a good death and doesn't like a lot of the kind of formaldehyde embalming practices of America. She also has a book, The Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, which is like a memoir of her time working in a crematorium. But this is very much looking at different cultures and communities and their interactions with death rites in general. So if you like trying to experience different parts of the world through your travel writing, rather than necessarily just descriptions of the pretty kind of scenery, this is definitely one for you. And I love her writing style. I think she has a really wonderful sense of humour, which is definitely necessary when talking about something that could be so heavy like death. Going back to some of the historical stuff I was talking about earlier, one that I read again quite a few years ago but has really stuck with me is Nathaniel's Nutmeg by Giles Milton, I believe. Yes, I'm just reading it off the screen. So this is looking at the trade of nutmeg in particular, and it's really looking at, I believe it's in the 17th century, so 1600s. Look at that. Good memory, Emma. It's about the kind of trade that was happening around there and the race to get to various sort of resources on these tiny islands from the various kind of global superpowers and kind of colonial powers of the time. Really, really fascinating, chock full of information, and again, you can have lots of lovely tales of boats on the high sea and how they kind of travelled between these different areas, challenges when it comes to technology and advancements in technology, trying to find the pass over the north, which definitely didn't work for very many people. So if you're a big fan of history, this is a classic for you. You definitely need to check it out. But if you're a fan of, again, kind of very much sea-based travel writing, this one's a great one as well. And then my final one probably doesn't technically count as travel writing, but I do think it's kind of interesting to look at travel in a smaller context. And this is Mudlark by Lara Maiklem. So mudlarking is the act of looking through kind of the riverbed of the Thames to try and find various kind of old artifacts and antiques as the tide goes out. And it was really interesting to read about because you got to experience Lara's time kind of traipsing up and down the Thames and had a kind of time travelling within London, specifically along this kind of one stretch of river, and sort of her experiences along the way. Now, full confession, mudlarking I did not enjoy as much as I was expecting to. I listened to it on audiobook and I think there was something about either the narrator or the authorial voice or something about it that just didn't really click for me, which is very, very strange, which is why I'm still comfortable recommending it, because many people I know have really enjoyed it, especially those who have very similar tastes to me when it comes to things like history books and non-fiction. So if you are a big history buff or you do like your travel writing but you're happy for things to be a little bit more sort of on the home turf, I do think this is one that is worth checking out because a lot of people have really enjoyed it. For me personally, it was like a 3-star read. I didn't not enjoy it, but it just didn't quite hit the mark in the way that I was expecting it to, if I'm being brutally honest about this book. So there you have it. Those are some of my travel writing recommendations. A lot of them are not, strictly speaking, pure travel writing. I find some travel writing to be a little bit problematic because it often is a white person bowling into a different community or culture and then making commentary that I don't really agree with. But I do have some other travel writing on my shelf that I hope to get to soon, all of it normally with some kind of like historically kind of slant to it. I think the next one I'm really interested in picking up is Erebus by Maiklem, which is about, again, a particular ship and its various journeys historically. So if you have any travel writing recommendations, please do leave them in the comments down below. I'm always on the lookout for more non-fiction that sounds fascinating, and if you think any of these sound really interesting, please do let me know which ones you've added onto your TBR. And yeah, that's basically it from me. Have a wonderful reading week and I will chat to you soon. Bye.